Well, hello and welcome to that special edition of PM Express. Leading up to Ghana at 60, why not we thought we go back and recollect, as has been said many times by many philosophers, that the people without the history or people who ignore their history are like a tree with no roots. You are practically dead, just standing. And in any case, for you to love and appreciate anything, you just start by knowing about a thing. And it is my strong belief that as the youth, and even some of us adults, the more we get to know about how it is Ghana got here, that we're going to celebrate our 60, the more we shall fall in love with it. And last week, many of you sent me messages saying congratulations for the program, and also congratulating the great professor for his in-depth knowledge on our history. And as I promised, we're going to be part 2 and maybe even part 3. If it is good, it must continue. And since it is good, it's still continuing. My name is Nana Ansakwa, the 4th Chief of Akwamu Edumasa, and also your favorite host. And as usual, I have with me Professor H.P. Matheson, historian, political historian, and he's in-depth and passionate about Pan-Africanism, which he has coined as Afro-mondialism. In short, Afro-optimism, which is relevant today. The African must be optimistic. There's no need of chogbe. Those days are gone. We are in the era of computer and information, and so we must be optimists. Last week we looked at Ghana from 1947 leading up to independence, and he took us through a good history. And so this week, in part 2, we are going to look at the first republic under Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and then the 1966 coups, and subsequently all the coups that has bedeviled this country from 72, 79, 81, the coup d'etat, the differences between them, and the new terminology or theory, Rollinsism. What does the professor mean by Rollinsism? We'll look at all that. We'll touch on Acheampong. You don't want to touch that remote control. Stay tuned. We are coming straight back. Well, thank you very much for staying. As I've already introduced my guest, Professor H.P. Matheson, a political historian. Prof, thank you very, very much for your time and sharing your in-depth knowledge with me and the whole world.
It's my pleasure.
Very good. But I must say, as you know, these programs have been pre-recorded, and this is being recorded on the 23rd of February, which happens to be Du Bois' birthday, and tomorrow, the 25th, which is Friday, would be the celebration 51st birthday of
51st
anniversary of the first coup d'etat. But I must say, as many committed a coup d'etat before 1966 by hijacking the Christianborg Castle,
and that was precisely 1693.
1693. Wow. But being that Du Bois' birthday and you being very playing an integral part of the Du Bois Center, maybe you have a birthday wish for the departed soul.
Once more, thank you very much, Nana. Well, Nana, on my personal behalf, on behalf of our North American representative of the Center for Ghana Studies, and of course, the Nkrumah Pan-Africanist Fellows, I say congratulations to the great W.E.B. Du Bois, posthumously, and also to my colleagues at the Du Bois Memorial Center, and once more to our North American representative in Ohio, Lima precisely, Ohio, that is Shabazz Matheson. Nana, tomorrow also, as you have just enumerated, will be a sad day.
So when we say tomorrow, 24th of February.
That is 24th February, 1966. Will be a sad day for Ghanaians and all loving Pan-Africanists as well as Nkrumahs. I would wish to take this candid opportunity of yours, Nana, collectively, for us to say Ayiko and then sorry to the detractors who, permit me to use a word, bastardly brought the clock of development of Africa vis-a-vis Pan-Africanism to zero by causing the coup d'etat of 1966.
Funny enough, that leads me to my first question as to Nkrumah's the First Republic and the first coup, adding it all together, because some of the reasons we hear is that Nkrumah was a dictator, who was not a peace-loving man, and therefore he had to go. Prof, you are the historian.
Nana, once more, thank you. This is merely a myopism of the people who made the coup and who had this type of, pessimism. Kwame Nkrumah was a peace lover. Indeed, if he was not a peace lover, where was he going to when the coup started and finally finished? Nana, within the limits of historical antecedents, I would wish to state ipso facto that Nkrumah per se was the darling boy of Africa and Africans within continent Africa and the diaspora. In the sense that among all heads of state, as laid back as 63, 66, that is 32 of them in Africa, Nkrumah was the only person gingerly poised to see to it that continental Africa divorced herself from the so-called oligarchy of the Western world, more so the colonialists. Hence, Nkrumah had the inspiration of bringing to Africa that idea of African union, not organization of African unity. Nana, you and many Ghanaians listening to us are more so Pan-Africanists and fellow Africans in the diaspora, more so the African American, will at least wish to accept the fact that, yes, Nkrumah, 1958, through the fiat and instrumentality of the organizational efforts of the late George Padmore, organized April All-African Heads of State meeting, and it was followed in December. Why in December? Because by that time, Sekou Touré, that is the then president or leader of Conakry, Guinea, forcefully had his independence. Why do I say forcefully? Nana, here, colonial France, under the tutelage of Charles de Gaulle, General Charles de Gaulle, did not wish and would never want to extend or grant independence to African colonies. So here, General de Gaulle went to, Charles de Gaulle. Permit me to paraphrase him in French and then do the translation. General de Gaulle, here, the Conakry Guinea leader, that is Sekou Touré, Comrade Sekou Touré. Comrade Sekou Touré went to Charles de Gaulle and told him in the face, écoutez, mon cher général, pour moi et mes peuples guinéens, nous préférons l'indépendance maintenant, plus que l'indépendance dans l'esclavage. Quoi qu'il en soit, advient que pourra, donnez-moi. What is it? My general, listen to me. Whether you are prepared or not, the people of Guinea and my personal self, we are prepared for the independence now. You like it or not, give it to us. We prefer independence in poverty than independence in servitude. General de Gaulle removed his specs, looked at him, put back his specs, and said, hey, tiens, mon cher, voilà, je vous en donne. I've given you your independence. Go away. Mais quand même, quoi qu'il en soit, on va se rendre. We shall see what you do with your independence. And this one led to the idea that General de Gaulle and France removed every donation, removed all structures, all infrastructures in Conakry, Guinea, and left Secretary and his Guinea, nude. And it was in this vein Secretary approached Kwame Nkrumah. There Kwame Nkrumah, through the benevolence of the people of Ghana, lent money to Secretary to start Africa. And that was the beginning of the African Union, the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union, precisely January 1st, 1961. So this was the basis of the African Union. But then, when they went back to establish the OAU, continental Africa had been traumatized. Continental Africa was in shambles. We had the Francophones aggregating themselves, calling themselves the Brazzaville 12, the Brazzaville group, with the darling boy of Africa, that is Abubakar Tafawa Balewa of Nigeria, being with them. Then the radical voice or the progressive voices, that is Nkrumah, and the Moroccan king, that is Mohammed V, the father of current, the grandfather of current Moroccan chief, with Secretary, and Modibo Keita of Mali. They were, in one group. They baptized this group as the Moroccan group or the Casablanca bloc. So, congruently, these groups came to a political amalgam precisely on the 25th of May 1963 and established the OAU. Nkrumah could not have his way because Nkrumah could have his say and the majority will have their way. And that is why AU did not come at first, but OAU, Organization of African Unity. From there, Nkrumah between 1963 to 66 was fantastically marvelous in the sense that Nkrumah, according to his independence speech, the independence of Ghana will be meaningless unless it is linked with the total liberation of Africa. And in this vein, Nkrumah made sure that all liberation fighters were congregated here in the then students' hostel, where Ministry of Foreign Affairs today is located. Here, Mugabe, President Mugabe of Zimbabwe, was one of the beneficiaries. He finally went to Takoradi to teach. Here, Nkrumah, as I said earlier, organized the All Africans Congress 58, followed it up. Now, Nana, to come to the idea or to come to the leitmotiv, the raison d'être, the raison pourquoi, why the coup d'etat of 1966 was established. Nana, why was Nkrumah overthrown? As you ask, was he not democratic? Was he someone who did not like peace? And as I stipulated earlier, where was Nkrumah when the coup was hatched? Nkrumah was on his way on an international mission, that is to Hanoi, to broker peace between mighty America and that of Hanoi. So if this was not someone, a peace lover, why should Nkrumah have taken, the journey on behalf of the United Nations? So one, Nkrumah was a peace-loving person. And again, how was the coup d'etat conceived? Within the limits of historical antecedents, Nana, and of course, I'm speaking from an opportune position as a former Ghanaian diplomat. That is files we have gone through. The coup was conceived, prepared, and finally executed by the CIA, Mossad, CEDES of France, Mossad of Israel, the CIO of America. As an academic discussion, what is our reference? Our reference, John Stockwell and his colleague Philip Agee, former CIA operatives, in their collective book, In Search of Enemies, titled In Search of Enemies, The Ghana Case Study, 1978. Again, Afrifa, after the 66 coup, wrote his own book titled The Ghana Coup d'Etat, published by Frank Cass in London, pages 121, 125 of this book. Afrifa, that is General A.A. Afrifa, one of the coupists with Kotoka, intimated in a Latin phraseology, which I will, with your permission, Nana, I may quote him verbatim, that dulce et decorum pro es patria moria. Invariably saying, Afrifa was telling us, we were bound to do and die for the fatherland, and also as people who have been in Sandhurst. That is where they trained. Of course, they trained there and took up the afterthought of their masters. Go home, Ghana, G-H-A-A. Go home and you colonize all for us, my own coinage. Go home and you colonize all for us. As I asked, where was the coup conceived? Nana, you and all Ghanaians who are, and then of course our colleagues in the media and academia, who are interested in Ghana studies, will agree with us that when we acquired a republican status, and when I say we, that is Ghana, July 1st, 1960, within the limits of constitutionalism, the colonial governor was to pack bag and baggage and leave. That is, Lord Listowel had to leave with 190 ex-servicemen, that is colonial and military people. By that time, Nana, you may recall, the chief of defense staff was a British in the name of A.T., General A.T. Alexander. Again, when the Congo crisis, came about, that is precisely 1960-61, the United Nations uniquely pointed at this man, handpicked him, and threw him to Congo to be the United Nations, commander. He also sent back, picked Kotoka, picked Afrifa, picked Nkrumah, and then Okran. That is kind of Okran. These people went to Congo, and it was there that A.T. Alexander hiked the coup. You may look at for African Confidential, 1967, August edition, page 13. I'm not saying it, it is in the African Confidential, printed, published in London. And also, you may ask, other colleagues in African research like, senior comrade Pratt, they have read the classified documentation. I've not been opportune to read the classified documentation released by Britain. Now, 66 coup, I would say that 66 coup, among all other coup d'etats, had been very, very bloody. Nana, let's go within the limits of etymology, within the limits of semantics or lexicology. What exactly is the word coup d'etat? What is the socio-political dichotomy between coup d'etat, revolution, and a regime change? As I stipulated some time ago in my presentation, and of course, then if you may recall, in our private discussion, that the first coup d'etat in Ghana, if we had had independence, should have been the Assaman, Chief Assamese, Caesar of Christianborg Castle, 69-3 in August 69-3.
I must say the keys are still in Akwamu.
Precisely.
As we speak.
As a chief, you know it better. You know it better, Nana. Now, The 28th February 1948, you know, Christiansborg debacle with the ex-servicemen and the colonial administration. That is, you know, Colonel or Colonel Crazy, which our people call crazy man. That is Crazy, C-R-E-A-S-Y. He was the colonial governor. Now, what were the ex-servicemen looking out for? They were looking for betterment for their services, and then some of them to be promoted to the officer grade. But because they were not so lettered, they had not passed through the military academy, it could not happen. But then Iyadima succeeded. The same thing Iyadima demanded in his 1963 coup d'etat. Bokassa of Centrafrique succeeded because he had passed through coup d'etat. He had passed through a military academy, and also there was already independence. Now, coming back to the etymology, coup d'etat, what does it signify? Le coup contre qui? Nana, permit me to, intellectually somersault here. Most of the words used by us as English-speaking, media personnel and academics is derived from French. Take the case of passport. Why? Because before the UN, United Nations, French was the only language used in the League of Nations. So, passport, what does it mean? This is my citizen. Allow him to pass through the port. C'est mon citoyen. Permettez-lui de passer au port chez vous. Passport. Nana, I would like to meet you in your office today. I'm coming for a rendezvous. Nana, rendez-vous même chez vous. It's a French word. So many French words have come to stay. So getting back to our word coup d'etat. Coup d'etat was coined after the overthrow of the French aristocracy by Napoleon II. From there, we started experiencing coup d'etats. But I'll come later on to the difference between coup d'etat and a revolution. So 1851, Napoleon II in France. 1917, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. 1922, Benito Mussolini, Italy. 1928, Pilsudski of Poland. 1948, the Czechoslovak Union Communists. And from there, coup d'etat entered Africa, 52. Nana, it is vitally important to establish ipso facto that before 1950, there was no African country which had an officer within the military forces. No officer. Even in Ghana, it was after the Republican statutes, Nkrumah upgraded 27 of our officers to senior officer to take over from H.E. Alexander and his, ilk. So, 52, Gamal Abdel Nasser staged a coup d'etat in Egypt. And of course, 1956, you may recall, he was forced into the Suez Canal crisis because imperialists could never sit down to see Africa move. So with tripartite aggression, America, France, and then Britain invaded it. But alas, he survived. So that was 52. 55, anti-Peron revolution in Argentina. 56, the Hungarian Revolution. Then 58, Iran, Iraq, and Sudan. That was 58. 59, Comrade Fidel Castro overthrew the darling boy of America. That is Sergente Fulgencio Batista. That was 59. 1960, the Congo crisis. Mobutu Sese Seko. He came again, 65. So Mobutu did coup d'etat. Yes, as I will see in Ghana with Rawlings. That was the Congo crisis. 65, we had a twin coup d'etat. That is Nigeria and Ghana. January 15th, 1965. Agui Ironshi established a coup d'etat. And of course, Ghana here, we all know the Kotokaist, episode of his Bosom Junior Major A.A. Afrifa. That was 66, 24 February 66 precisely.
As far as Ghana is concerned, listening to you, so that's the only coup that's probably planned and conceived externally.
Precisely. Now, we cannot for certainly say, but this is explicit, because the CIA operatives who carried out this thing there had told us. But many a time, coup d'etats are normally organized with some political interests and also intellectual interests and the media. And this is where, through the analysis, we say fusionism. Nana will come to it. To the literature. Thanks for this question, Nana. But then, with the Ghana episode, coup d'etat, as you rightly pointed out, it was Kotoka and Afrifa who started it all. And it was so bloody. The youth may not know this. 51 years, it was so bloody. The developmental clock of Africa, not only Ghana, was brought back to ground zero. Because America had realized when Nkrumah launched 1965, his book, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And don't forget, Nana, 1965, Nkrumah was the chairman of OAU. So as it is the practice, the chairman of OAU annually will go to the United Nations, General Assembly to read the message on behalf of Africa. So Nkrumah naturally lambasted. And that was why the regime changed. Nana, let me sarcastically, ask, maybe could it be that, because remember, our past president, that is John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, launched also a book there, and they lambasted about frozen chicken and all this.
The regime change.
So we put it there. Yeah, we put it there. Now, coming back to our analysis, Nana, initially, I epitomized that there is that socio-political dichotomy between coup d'etat and a revolution. Nana, before you ask me, what are the differences? Coup d'etat is mainly organized, executed by people in military attire. This is what my senior colleague, Professor Makokwe, says, kakitocracy. And this is why I baptize in my literature as abongomaniasis. And this is why another senior colleague, Ibrahim Gambari, the Nigerians, Ibrahim Gambari, Ofonagoro, and then also Bolaji Akinyemi, they refer to as zombie maniasis. Good. And what do I mean by abongoma? That is the military mind, the corporatist attitude. Why could it has carry corporatist attitude? Nana, let's look at what Acheampong, Ignatius Kutu Acheampong said. Permit me to somersault. We will come to Kutu. But just to establish, the corporatism. Kutu, in his maiden speech, January 15th, even though the coup was, executed January 13, 1972, by January 15, 1972, General I.K. Acheampong stipulated inter alia, and I quote him verbatim, even 40% of our meager budget was drastically reduced. Even senior military personnel were no more consulted. When Muzia was taking his, what do you want us to do? Quote and unquote, Acheampong, Colonel Acheampong, January 15, 1972. So this is what I mean by corporatism. Now, coup d'etats, as I said, there is that socio-political dichotomy between coup d'etat and that of revolution.
I want us to move and then look at all the coups from 72, 79, 81, and then the Rollinsism factor.
Nana, thank you very much. Let me just, give this dichotomy. Revolutions are normally not carried by people who are in khaki or people who have passed through a military academy or military training. Take the case of Mao Zedong. His 1949 revolution. Mao was a librarian in the university. Take the case of Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam. He was an agriculturist. Take the case of Lenin, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Lenin in his revolution said, no, I am going to use perestroika. Товарищи, извините, пожалуйста, вам сказать, конечно, вы мои рабочие. Мы надо перестроимся. I am coming to you. You are the workers. I don't hold a gun, but we shall take power. So Lenin in Russia had never been to any military academy or been a soldier. Africa here, Mandela was a professional boxer and a lawyer. Museveni of Uganda was an academic in Makerere University. He had never been to the army. Charles Taylor was an administrator. He had never been to any military academy. Name them. So here, revolutions are normally perceived by an individual with the social strata of that country moving. So coming back to Ghana, 66, 72, 79, 81, we would say that Rawlings' 1981 takeover was a revolution. Rawlings, how do we look at Rawlings? The concept of Rollinsism. Rawlings' political philosophy. When Rawlings came, 31st December 81.
Hold on to that. Let me take a quick break because Rollinsism factor, I really want to understand, and you don't want to miss this one because it is quite peculiar. Coming straight back. Well, thank you very much for staying, and I'm sure you are enjoying it just like I am. History, history, history. Don't you just love it? And Prof, just before I interjected, we were looking at the Rollinsism factor, where 81, you didn't think it was a coup?
It was not a coup, Nana. Thank you very much, Nana. Nana, permit me to use my own coinage. If you look at all that political quote-unquote bluff, the shishimatics and huhumatics of Rollinsism, what do I mean by that? That political bravado. Rawlings has a secret, quote-unquote, secret of success. And what do I mean by that? And what is that? Nana, you and I will remember, between 82 and 86, Rawlings with PNDC, there had been 15, I insist, 15 attempted coup d'etats against Rawlings, and he survived. How did he arrive at the fait accompli? Rollinsism per se, that is the political philosophy of Rawlings, per se is what? He uses strategy, stratagem, and political deception. What do I mean by that? It is in this vein that I personally have baptized Rollins' political safari and Rollins' political practice and Rollins per se as the tilapia busumana of national politics. What do I mean by tilapia busumana? Quote and unquote. CSIR, that is our scientific, body here, refer to Akosombu tilapia as tilapia busumana. In meanders, Rollins can tell you 1 + 1 is 11. Why not 2? He will prove it to you. This is the bravado of the man. Look it. June 4th, Rollins' first entry into the political, history of Madagascar. The revolution was so bloody. He came back 31st December and told everyone that it was not a coup d'etat, it was a revolution, and that everyone should get involved in a participatory democracy, which I personally in my literature have baptized as a period of libertarian basicalism, quote and unquote. A period of libertarian basicalism. Finally, 1992, Rollins liberalized more than Washington, more than USC. So philosophically per se, Rollinsism per se has metamorphosed threefold. And that is why, again, I have baptized as the three concentric theory of Rollinsism. Rollins today can be bloody. Tomorrow, he will be participatory. And the third day, he will be so... Look, Nana, let me quickly come in. Rollins did not have any dialogue with the Western world. Rollins was today with Gaddafi, who was the enemy of NATO. Within 24 hours, the same Rollins is in France, with François Mitterrand. From Gaddafi to François Mitterrand.
And I think Clinton.
Within 24 hours, he's in the USA to dine with the Clintons, with Kentucky, Turkey. If there is not someone who combines the concentric theory, how will he have this fait accompli? Again, the 15 coup d'etats, the attempted coup d'etats against him. The 19th June 1983 coup d'etat, that is the Giwas, coup d'etat, was so bloody. The Nobista invasion of Geoffrey Osei, J.H. Mensah's, missiles. How was J.H. Mensah, arrested at Newark in USA? That is through the dexterity of that time, through the dexterity of his spy machine, in the name of no other person than Senior Kojo Captain Chikata. So Rollins per se combines all these things, and that was why he succeeded. Now, Nana, it would be naive if I should failingly fail to establish that coup d'etats had been classified by other academic colleagues. Take the case of the works of Professor Amos Perlmutter, Samuel Huntington, Samuel DiCarlo, and of course our own Professor Blueway, Professor Makokwe, my good friend and colleague, Professor J.R.A. Aye, and of course in Nigeria, Ibrahim Gambari, Akinyemi Bolaji, and then Ofunaguru. They have classified coup d'etats and coup makers. So before you ask, how do we baptize Rollins? Nationally, quote and unquote, is the tilapia busumana of national politics. But nomenclature-wise, as a coup maker, Rollins is a Praetorian revolutionary fusionist. What do I mean by that, Nana? He took an AK-47 to destabilize the country. That is a Praetorian, by the nomenclature of Professor Amos Perlmutter, 1977, Washington University. Now, revolutionary, we all saw it 31st December. Fusionism, by the end of the PNDC, apart from him and Captain Kojuchi Carter, there was no more military person. So there was that fusionism between civilians and the military, and that's how Rollins operates. If you look at the PNDC, the amalgam, the people, Chris Atim, Sergeant Alolga Akatapori, Adupogu, and all of them, they were civilians. Yen, Atampuri, and the rest were civilians. Now also, before I land, Nana, permit me with due respect, sir. Nana, coup d'etat has frequencies. Here people say, oh, Ghana had got 4, 5 coup d'etat. No one wishes for a coup d'etat. Coup d'etat is not good, and it is hell. Democracy, the best. But within the limits of historical analysis, within the limits of political chemotherapy, quote and unquote, it has been established by no other one by William Thompson, 1972, a PhD dissertation, University of Washington, that Bolivia between 1946-70 had experienced 18 successful coup d'etats. Followed by Argentina, the same period, 1946-70, 16 coup d'etats. And in Africa, the Bolivia of Africa is Sudan. 8 coup d'etats. And don't forget, coup d'etats are not only peculiar to Africa or Asia. Even in Europe, France experienced coup d'etat between 1946-70, at the time of Charles de Gaulle, General Charles de Gaulle. 2 coup d'etats. Portugal experienced 3 coup d'etats. Burma experienced 3. So these are some of the examples. Nana.
We want to look at probably the Acheampong coup d'etat in the Acheampong years. What, obviously, he complained about the devaluation and military hierarchy not being consulted. Who was General I.K. Acheampong, and why has history written him out of the books of Ghana?
Thank you very much, Nana. It's a very good question. General I.K. Acheampong, FWK, Akufo and the rest. Akufo, Fred, we call him in the military academy, had been one of my instructors, so I knew him very well. Going back to Kutu,
He was a gentleman.
very gentlemanly with his mustache. Does not talk much. He was there at the time of, the CEO, Benasco. He was the commandant of Major Bull, Major Antonio, and the rest of the Canadians who were there, 65 anyway. Now, Nana, here, history has been very, very not gentlemanly and not good if history should be taken as a human being. History has not treated Colonel Acheampong well, regardless of the fact that he was a coupist, regardless of the fact that he passed through the barrel of the gun, the barrel of the Bindiga. Notwithstanding, I.K. Acheampong was a Pan-Africanist incarnated. Why? I.K. Acheampong, even though a military dress, but nearly had his political feet so close to that of Kwame Nkrumah. Why? He never, ever missed OAU. Right? Secondly, Nana, I.K. Acheampong, as you rightly put it, his agrarian revolution was so superb. I'm happy our current president, Nana Akufo-Addo, is talking of the agrarian revolution. I hope, and we do hope, he will go through that same way. Acheampong nearly succeeded. Dawenya, sugar factories, commander, name it. Acheampong did all that. And he nearly brought down Nkrumah to Ghana to pass away. But unfortunately, His advisors didn't give him that advice. Till, unfortunately, that fateful 27th April 1972, Nkrumah passed away, far away in Romania. And Acheampong was not up. Now, Acheampong was the envy of the generals. Why? Because Acheampong nearly succeeded. I use my word adversely, nearly in the sense that during his maiden coup d'etat, that is the NRC, that 13th January 1972, he was sustained and dynamized by the collective help of the three majors. Major Kwame Ba, Solomi, Major Solomi, and Major Agbo. But unfortunately, Odate Wellington, with a Wellington hat, Wellington boot, Wellington went back to his seniors to say that no, that time he was chief of defense staff, that no, he would not like to see senior officers take the salute from juniors. So Acheampong, either he dismisses the three majors or he, Acheampong, with the AK-47 by his side. Nana, if I'm Acheampong, you and I, what will you do, Nana? So Acheampong succumbed, signed, and the three majors were removed. So Acheampong became weak. Finally, what they could do was to remove him and reorganize SMC 1, Supreme Military Council 1. But we should not forget, Acheampong's Unigov process was going on. That was 5th July 1978. 5th July 1978, he was ostracized from the army and then sent back to Kumasi. Remember, Acheampong was born in Kumasi, September 13th, 1931. Schooled in Ejisu, had his, diploma in commerce, a shorthand writer, and then from there he went to Mons. Trained 1959, commissioned, and so between 59 to 78, 19 years, he rose from second lieutenant to a full general. Now, let me somersault back to, the SMC-1. SMC-1, because of his Unigov stance, Acheampong did not know peace. So his seniors used this one against him. Ostracized him, as I said earlier. And then thinking that they would not use the word Unigov in SMC-2. They would rather say they will remove all military people or uniformed people, stay there, and then Ghana should give them 4 years. Acheampong is no more our. So you give me 4 years. That is FWK Akufo, then Odate Wellington, and the rest of the guys. But no, professional bodies, you may recall 78, through Chobi, they lost 4 Ghanaians, 78. The universities, the tertiary institutions, the civil would not. So, and coups are normally organized when there is that leeway of social, ramifications. The center cannot hold within the civilian government. So, remember, Rollins aborted coup d'etat May 15, 1979. June 4th, they used this way, unleashed Rollins, that is Captain Boachijan and the rest of the colleagues, unleashed Rollins, and Rollins made his coup d'etat.
Before we end, let me go back. Do you think academia, media, history should recognize Acheampong, and why? Because, like you said, he came through the barrel of the gun.
Acheampong, regardless of the fact that military people are not recognized, but to some extent, Charles de Gaulle can never be written off. But he went through coup d'etat. Even George Washington was a revolutionary. George Washington fought George III of Britain had his independence through the help of the African Americans.
If one would then say, if you recognize Acheampong, then should we sort of recognize every coup maker?
Not all coup makers have, permit me to say, not all coup makers are entitled to this. Don't forget, even the AFRC, they had some traditional, pardon. Certain things AFRC had done, you cannot touch. So it's a type of, new recognition, a crypto recognition. Acheampong posthumously, when we are talking of the Green Revolution, he should be given a mark. He should be given a place. And the media and academia should at least look at this. So to an extent, Acheampong had played his part. Regardless of the fact that if you ask me, the Acheampong's weaknesses as compared to his, positive side was major. The weaknesses in the sense that there was banditry, there was the indiscipline within the armed forces, monetary indiscipline. You may recall the bank girls and the gov girls, quote and unquote. Morality was down, but then his performance vis-a-vis nationhood was more than his, bad side. So to answer your, yes, Acheampong needs recognition. And his title, General, should be restored.
But here we are, briefly before we end. If you look at Ghana now, it's being ruled by the Rollinsism stroke Nkrumah and Dankwa Buzia Dombo. Those are the two functions.
That's right.
Now, Acheampong overthrew Dankwa Buzia Dombo, and then he was killed by, Rollinsism stroke Nkrumah. So then who's now going to say, we were going to recognize you?
Politicians, Nana, are always opportunistic. Opportunistic in the sense that here Acheampong was the darling boy and the trusted friend of Buzia. So that fateful period, when Buzia left for UK, Acheampong took the opportunity. Don't forget, Acheampong was not in charge of the 5th Battalion. There was someone different with every ethnicity. So Buzia brought Acheampong from, Kumasi and asked him to take over. So it was an opportunity. Acheampong used this to make the coup d'etat. And then, by this time, when I said politicians are opportunistic, because Acheampong overthrew a UPist, they would not like him. But then, when Acheampong was invariably overthrown and then executed, the same politician said bravado to the people who executed Acheampong. So, this is what? Elimination by substitution. Now, coming back to the political situation in Ghana. Even right now, we still struggling, and the politicians are still struggling to see to it that the idea of a founder should not be Nkrumah. Who is a nationalist? Who is not a nationalist? As I stipulated in your previous interview, Nana, I stipulated inter alia, ipso facto, that a nationalist, per the new Advanced Learners English Dictionary, 6th edition, page 780, a nationalist is that person, be him a civilian, a politician, or even a military man, who is gingerly poised to see to it that his country wins independence. And a statesman is someone who is a politician in a given locality wielding respect and being loved and respected by his people. The same Advanced Learners Dictionary, page 1081. Now, who is a secessionist? A secessionist, per se, is that person who is not interested in seeing to it that his country wins independence. He prefers carving part of the country and ruling. So whether Nkrumah was a nationalist, Nkrumah was not a nationalist. Over to you, my audience.
And on that note, there's going to be part 3. And we are going to look at the Fourth Republic up onto the, no, the Fourth Republic up until, I think, John Mahama. And then, if we are so lucky, Prof is writing a book on the UP and the Akufo-Addo years. We'll also touch on that because this is just getting so exciting. And Prof, Mr. Prof is writing so many books, which will be, in the next edition, we'll be flashing them out. But Prof's favorite book is the one on Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, the Desert Hawk. So that's my best book. We'll be talking about them. We haven't lost him yet. We still have him. But on that note, have a beautiful, beautiful week. And stay tuned next Friday. There's more history. Prof, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Nana. It's my pleasure.